In the vastness of space, where stars twinkled like distant diamonds and planets spun silently in their orbits, there existed a race of beings called the Phyla. They were an ancient species, having traveled to countless worlds, studied thousands of other life forms, and explored the reaches of the universe that most other races could only dream of. Their society was based on knowledge, logic, and perfect order. They prided themselves on their ability to control everything around them, from their technology to their emotions. Their minds were sharp, their bodies flawless, and their civilization was built on the foundation of peace and efficiency. The Phio had perfected the art of living without surprises, without chaos. For centuries, the Phio had watched other species rise and fall, studying them from afar. They had encountered species that were more advanced in technology, and others that were more advanced in strength. But there was one thing that the Phio had never seen before, something that intrigued them beyond measure. Humans. Humans were different. They were unpredictable, emotional, and wildly curious. And that was precisely why the Phio had decided to send a team to Earth. For the first time in their long existence, the Phio were faced with a species that seemed to defy all logic. No other species had ever acted in such an odd, yet fascinating manner. The Phio had read about Earth, about its people, and about their strange ways. They had studied humans from a distance through their advanced technology, but nothing could truly prepare them for what they would find. The decision was made, and a small team of Phio scouts was dispatched to Earth. Their mission was clear: observe, study, and learn what made humans so special. The Phio knew that they could not simply land on Earth in their true forms, not yet anyway. They had to be careful. Earth was a world filled with surprises, and the Phio needed time to understand its inhabitants. So, they cloaked their ship and entered the planet's atmosphere, silently and without a trace. The Phio landed in a bustling city on Earth, their cloaking technology so advanced that they appeared invisible to the human eye. They could see everything, hear everything, and analyze everything without being noticed. From their hidden vantage points, they watched the humans go about their daily lives. What struck the Phio first was the sheer unpredictability of human behavior. One human would smile at a stranger, while another would get angry over something small. Some humans were kind, others were rude, and some were lost in thought, as if they were constantly searching for something. The Phio had never seen anything like it. Their own species had long ago eliminated emotions like anger or sadness from their lives, believing them to be unnecessary distractions. To the Phio, emotions were an annoyance, something to be controlled or discarded. But humans seemed to embrace their emotions, sometimes letting them control their actions, other times using them to connect with one another in ways that seemed deeply meaningful. As the days passed, the Phio studied the humans with increasing fascination. They saw humans arguing in the streets, laughing with friends, comforting one another, and at times even risking their lives for one another. They saw parents with children, lovers holding hands, and strangers helping those in need. And yet, despite all of this emotion, the humans were also incredibly resilient. When something went wrong, they didn't fall apart. They adapted, they learned, and they carried on. This ability to bounce back from hardship was something the Phio had never encountered before. In their own society, everything was planned and controlled. Life was safe, predictable, and orderly. There was no room for failure, because failure was seen as weakness. But here on Earth, failure seemed to be a part of life, and it didn't stop the humans. In fact, it seemed to drive them forward. The Phio were puzzled. They had traveled to countless worlds, observed countless species, but never before had they encountered one like this. There was something deeply intriguing about humans, something that made them stand out in the galaxy. One day, the Phio decided it was time to make contact. They had learned enough from their hidden observations and felt that they were ready to engage with humanity. They activated their cloaking devices to take on human forms, choosing bodies that were similar to the ones they had seen on Earth. The transformation was flawless. They walked among the humans, blending in seamlessly, and approached a busy city square. As they walked through the crowd, the Philo were struck by how alive the humans seemed. Their energy, their emotions, it was all so raw and real. In many ways, it was overwhelming. The Philo had never experienced life in such a vibrant, chaotic way. But there was something else that stood out to them, the curiosity in the eyes of the humans. Everywhere they looked, there were people asking questions, wondering about the world around them, seeking answers to the mysteries of life. One human, a young woman, caught their attention. She was sitting on a bench in the park, her eyes scanning a book, but every now and then, she would look up and observe the world around her. She seemed to be deep in thought, as if pondering the bigger questions of life. The Philo watched her for a moment, wondering what she was thinking. Then, something remarkable happened. The woman looked directly at the Philo. She didn't seem surprised or frightened, even though the Philo had appeared out of nowhere. Instead, she simply smiled and nodded. "Hello," she said, her voice warm and friendly. The Philo froze. They had not anticipated such an immediate and casual response. In most other species they had encountered, first contact was either met with fear or hostility. But this human, this one single human, had simply acknowledged them without hesitation. The young woman stood up and walked toward them. "Are you new here?" she asked, still smiling. "I don't think I've seen you around before." The Philo didn't know how to respond. They had never been asked such a simple question in such a casual way. They looked at each other, exchanging a silent communication. But then, the Philo realized something. This was the moment they had been waiting for. They had been sent to Earth to study the humans, and now they were face to face with one of them. The woman, sensing their hesitation, spoke again. "It's okay. You don't have to be shy. You can ask me anything." The Philo blinked. Could they trust her? Should they reveal themselves? There were so many questions swirling in their minds, but one thing was certain. The humans were unlike any other species they had encountered. They had never seen anything like this before. The Philo took a deep breath and stepped forward. It was time to begin the conversation, to understand the mystery that was humanity. As the woman stood there, patiently waiting, the Philo realized that they had made the right choice. Earth was a place of wonder and mystery, and humans, with their unyielding curiosity and complex emotions, were the key to unlocking it all. The first steps had been taken, and this, the Philo knew, was only the beginning of something far greater than they could have imagined. The Philo had spent days observing humans from the shadows, hidden in plain sight, watching their every move. From the moment they arrived on Earth, they were fascinated by the energy, the unpredictability, and the sheer variety of human behavior. The humans were so different from anything the Philo had encountered before. They lived in chaos, yet there was a strange beauty in it. The Philo couldn't help but be drawn to the mysteries of these beings. But now, it was time to make contact. The Philo had spent enough time studying humans from a distance. They had learned about their emotions, their habits, and their unpredictability. They had watched how humans laughed, cried, fought, and loved. They had witnessed acts of kindness and moments of cruelty. They had seen humans fail, yet always get back up, ready to try again. This curiosity, this ability to adapt, and their unrelenting will to push forward, despite the odds, had captivated the Philo. Now it was time to engage, to see for themselves just what made humans so different, so special. One early afternoon, the Philo gathered together in the city. They were cloaked, their appearance carefully altered to blend in with the humans. It was a simple thing. Using their advanced technology, they could change their form to resemble that of an average human. They chose forms that were ordinary, blending in seamlessly with the crowd. They wanted to observe, yes, but they also wanted to engage without causing a stir. Their chosen location was a busy park in the center of the city. The air was warm, and the sunlight filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows on the ground. People were walking, laughing, chatting with friends, or simply sitting alone, lost in thought. The Phylor's sharp eyes scanned the area, taking in everything. They marveled at the way humans interacted with their environment. It was like a dance, a continuous flow of motion, communication, and energy. As the Phylor moved through the park, they noticed a young woman sitting on a bench, her gaze focused on the pages of a book in her hands. She seemed deep in thought, completely unaware of the Phylor's presence. She was the kind of human that the Phylor had read about, the type who was curious, always asking questions, searching for answers. Her face was calm, but there was a spark in her eyes that suggested she was contemplating something deeper, something more important than the world around her. The Phylor couldn't resist. They decided to approach her. After all, they had come to learn, to understand, and this seemed like the perfect opportunity. As they walked closer, they kept their cloaks active, making sure not to reveal themselves too soon. But there was something about her presence that intrigued them, something about her curiosity that called out to them. When they were just a few feet away, the woman looked up from her book. She paused for a moment, and their eyes met. The Phylor were taken aback. She didn't flinch. She didn't look away. She didn't seem surprised at all. Instead, she simply smiled at them. "Hi," she said, her voice friendly, almost welcoming. "You look lost. Can I help you?" The Phylor stood frozen for a moment, unsure of what to do. The simplicity of the woman's greeting caught them off guard. Most species they encountered had either feared their presence or reacted with hostility. But this human, she was different. She seemed curious, but not in a fearful way. She seemed open, willing to engage. The Phylor exchanged looks between themselves, communicating silently. Should they respond? What should they say? The woman was waiting for an answer, her eyes full of gentle curiosity. Finally, one of the Phylor, who had taken the form of a tall man, stepped forward and nodded. He spoke softly, though his voice sounded different from the humans, with an almost mechanical quality. It was the best they could do for now, mimicking human speech, though they had no true vocal cords. "We are new here," the Phylor said carefully, choosing his words as best as he could. "We are observing." The woman didn't seem surprised by this. She nodded as if it made perfect sense. "Observing, huh? That sounds interesting. What exactly are you observing?" she asked, still smiling. The Phylor paused. They had prepared for many possible reactions, but this wasn't one of them. She wasn't demanding to know more, nor was she frightened. Instead, she was simply interested. Her eyes were wide, full of questions, but they were kind questions. She wasn't judging them. She wasn't afraid of what they might do. She was just curious. "We are studying humans," another Phylor said, their voice slightly different, but still understandable. "Trying to understand your ways." The woman's smile grew a little wider. "Well, I'm happy to help with that. I'm Mara," she said, introducing herself. She gestured to the bench next to her. "Why don't you sit down? You're not the first to want to learn about humans, you know." The Phylor exchanged surprised glances. Humans were not only open to meeting new people, but they also offered help without hesitation. This was unlike anything the Phylor had ever experienced. The offer seemed genuine, as though the woman truly wanted to assist them. With no other options, the Phylor accepted. They sat down on the bench next to her, each of them choosing to adopt a form that appeared familiar to Mara, though they were still cloaked in a way that their true appearance remained hidden. "So," Mara began, after a few moments of silence, "what have you learned so far about us? What's the most interesting thing you've seen?" The Phylor exchanged looks again, this time with a sense of wonder. They had observed humans for days, yet they hadn't expected to be asked such a question. What had they learned? They had seen the laughter and tears, the kindness and cruelty, the passion and the pain. But what was the most interesting thing? One of the Phylor, who had taken the form of a woman, spoke first. "You love without logic. Your emotions are unpredictable. You laugh when you should cry. and you cry when you should laugh. Mara nodded thoughtfully, her gaze softening. That's true, she said, but that's what makes us human, right? We don't always follow rules. We don't always do what makes sense. We're messy, but that's what makes us alive. We feel things deeply, and that drives us to do crazy things sometimes. The Fire were stunned. This was something they hadn't expected to hear. They had always believed that to be truly alive, one had to be logical and controlled. Emotions were a weakness, something to be avoided. Yet here was a human, telling them that it was the very chaos of their emotions that made them who they were. It's like, you can't really understand what it means to be alive unless you feel everything, Mara continued. The good, the bad, the beautiful, and the ugly. It's all part of the human experience. The Fire were silent, trying to process her words. They had never considered life this way. To them, life was about order, about avoiding mistakes and chaos. But this human, Mara, was showing them a different side of existence, a side they couldn't ignore. The conversation continued for a while longer, as Mara shared more about what it meant to be human. She spoke about the challenges humans faced, the triumphs they celebrated, and the way they constantly sought meaning in everything they did. The Fire listened carefully, absorbing every word, every idea. They were beginning to understand, in small ways, just what made humanity so fascinating. Finally, as the sun began to set, the Fire knew it was time to go. They had gathered information, yes, but they had also learned something far more valuable than they had ever imagined. They had witnessed the heart of humanity, its curiosity, its passion, and its ability to love without reason. And that, they realized, was something truly remarkable. As they stood to leave, Mara smiled at them. It was nice talking to you. I hope you find what you're looking for. The Fire nodded, unsure of how to respond. They had come to Earth to learn, and now they were walking away with more than they had ever hoped for. For the first time, they were beginning to understand the true power of humanity, and it was something they would never forget. The Fire had never met a species quite like humans. Even after their first encounter with Mara, they felt a deep curiosity about Earth and its people. Everything about the way humans lived, thought, and interacted fascinated them. They had spent countless years observing countless worlds, but none had offered such mystery, such depth as humans did. After their conversation with Mara, the Fire were left with more questions than answers. They had learned a lot about human emotions and how humans embraced their chaos. But there was something else they couldn't quite understand. Why did humans seem to search for meaning in everything they did? Why did they constantly ask questions, even when they didn't know the answers? Why did they always push forward, even when faced with hardship? The Fire didn't have the answers, but they were determined to find them. And so, they returned to the city where they had first met Mara. They knew that if they were to truly understand humans, they needed to engage with more of them. It wasn't enough to observe from a distance. The Fire needed to ask, to listen, to dive deep into the minds of the humans they encountered. This time, the Fire appeared in different forms. They took on the shape of different people, men, women, young and old, so that they could interact with a wider range of humans. They blended in seamlessly, walking through the streets and parks, observing the behaviors and conversations around them. One afternoon, they found themselves sitting in a small cafe, watching people pass by, some hurrying, some strolling leisurely. A group of people were sitting at a table, talking about a recent film they had watched, while an elderly man sat alone by the window, gazing out at the world. The Fire were drawn to him. There was something about the way he looked at the world. His eyes were filled with a quiet wisdom, as if he had seen everything, and yet still had so many questions. They decided to approach him. When they sat down across from the old man, he didn't seem surprised. He simply looked at them with a calm smile, as though he had been waiting for them all along. "Would you like to ask me something?" the old man said, his voice soft yet clear. The Fire, taken aback by his directness, hesitated. They had never met a being who seemed so at ease with the unknown. Most species they encountered were either afraid or hostile to new ideas, to anything that was unfamiliar. But this human, this old man, seemed almost inviting. He didn't seem afraid to explore the mysteries of life. He seemed to embrace them. "We are curious," one of the Fire said, choosing its words carefully. "We do not understand why humans are always searching for meaning in things. Why do you constantly ask questions? Why do you seek answers to things that might never be known?" The old man took a slow sip from his cup of tea before responding. He didn't rush his words, as if he were carefully choosing each one to give the right answer. "I spent many years thinking about this," he began, "and I think the best way to put it is this. Humans search for meaning because we are constantly aware that we don't have all the answers, and that makes us want to know more. It's the uncertainty, the mystery, that drives us. If we knew everything, if we had all the answers, life would be boring. Without questions, without curiosity, we wouldn't have a reason to grow, to change, or to explore." The Fire listened carefully. They had never thought about life this way. In their own civilization, certainty was everything. They had built their society on logic and control, with everything planned out, from the smallest detail to the biggest decision. They had no questions because they already knew the answers. But this old man's words made them realize that the unknown could be as powerful as the known. The desire to search for meaning, even if the answers were never fully clear, was what made humans so unique. The old man continued, "It's not the answers that matter most. It's the journey of asking the questions. It's the process of learning, of growing, of becoming. That's what makes life meaningful. Each question we ask leads to new discoveries, and with each discovery, we become better versions of ourselves." The Fire exchanged silent glances. They had come to Earth to observe, to understand. But now they were beginning to realize that humans didn't just search for answers because they needed them. They searched because the search itself was what gave their lives purpose. It was the pursuit of knowledge, not the knowledge itself, that mattered. One of the Fire, who had taken the form of a woman, asked the old man, "But what if the answers you seek are not there? What if you spend your entire life searching for something that can never be found?" The old man smiled gently. "Then you enjoy the search. You find joy in the journey, in the questions themselves. Because in the end, what matters is not the destination, but how you traveled. Did you learn along the way? Did you grow? Did you experience life fully?" The Fire were silent. They had never considered life this way. For them, the answers were the most important thing. Knowledge, truth, and certainty had always been their guiding principles. But this old man, this wise human, was teaching them that the pursuit of knowledge was not just about the answers. It was about the experiences, the challenges, and the growth that came from asking the right questions. One of the Fire spoke up, his voice soft. "But if you never find the answers, does that mean your life was in vain? Does it mean your search was meaningless?" The old man chuckled softly, a twinkle in his eye. "I think that's the point," he said. "The search itself is the meaning. The fact that you're searching, that you're asking questions, means that you care. It means that you are alive. And that, my friends, is what gives life meaning. Not the answers, but the fact that you are willing to ask the questions in the first place." The Fire were stunned. They had come to Earth looking for answers, looking for a logical understanding of humanity. But what they had learned from Murrah and this old man was something far deeper. Humans didn't just search for answers. They searched because they were alive. And that was something the Fire could never have understood until now. As they sat with the old man, the Fire realized that they had been approaching their mission all wrong. They had been focused on finding the right answers, on understanding everything in a logical way. But humans weren't like that. They didn't need to know everything. They didn't need all the answers. They just needed to ask the questions. The conversation continued for hours, each word from the old man sinking deeper into the minds of the Fire. They talked about the nature of curiosity, the importance of questioning, and the beauty of the unknown. The Fire were beginning to understand that this was what made humans so special, their unquenchable thirst for knowledge, and their ability to find meaning in the search itself. As the sun began to set, the old man stood up, signaling the end of their conversation. "Well, I must be going now. I hope you've learned something today." The Philor stood as well, bowing slightly in gratitude. "We have learned much," one of them said, his voice filled with respect. "Thank you for your wisdom." The old man smiled. "It's the least I could do. Remember, it's the questions that matter, not the answers. Keep asking. Keep searching. That's what makes life worth living." And with that, the old man walked away, leaving the Fire in quiet contemplation. They had come to Earth to understand humans, to study their behavior, their emotions, and their way of life. But in the process, they had discovered something far more profound, something that no amount of logic or certainty could ever provide. They had discovered the beauty of curiosity, the power of questions, and the joy of the search itself. As the Fire stood there, watching the sunset, they realized that they had learned something that would stay with them forever. It wasn't the answers that mattered most, it was the questions. The Fire had learned much in their time on Earth. They had discovered that humans were not like other beings they had encountered in the vastness of the universe. What intrigued the Fire the most was not just the humans' curiosity, but the way they embraced their imperfections. It was a concept the Fire struggled to understand. For their entire civilization, perfection had always been the goal. They believed that anything less than perfect was flawed, something to be avoided at all costs. But humans seemed to celebrate their flaws. They even found beauty in them. As the Fire walked through the city, they saw humans in all kinds of situations. Some were laughing, others were crying, and some were just walking around, lost in their thoughts. They observed people of different ages, from children playing in the streets to elderly individuals sitting in the parks, quietly reflecting on their lives. There was a rawness to humanity that the Fire had never encountered before. It was messy, complicated, and sometimes painful, but it was also beautiful. The Fire were still trying to understand how such imperfection could be so meaningful. They had never seen a species so willing to embrace their flaws, their mistakes, and their challenges. In their world, imperfection was seen as a weakness. A mistake was something to be corrected immediately, and every effort was made to perfect everything: ideas, creations, and even emotions. But here, on Earth, imperfection seemed to be an integral part of life. The Fire couldn't help but wonder, how could imperfection bring about such beauty? They decided to observe humans even more closely. One evening, they found themselves in a crowded marketplace, watching as people bargained with vendors, shared food, and laughed together. There was an energy in the air, a vibrancy that the Fire hadn't noticed before. It wasn't perfect. The vendors were arguing over prices, children were running around carelessly, and there was a general sense of chaos. Yet, amid this disorder, the Fire saw something remarkable. People were enjoying themselves. They were connected, sharing moments of joy, even though everything around them was far from perfect. The Fire moved through the crowd, marveling at the sense of community that seemed to exist in the chaos. As they observed, they noticed a woman who stood out from the rest. She was sitting alone at a small table, sketching in a notebook. Her clothes were simple, and her face showed signs of exhaustion, as if she had been working long hours. But there was something in her eyes, something that suggested a deep connection to the world around her. She wasn't perfect, but the Fire could see that she was alive with emotion, with a sense of purpose. Intrigued, the Fire decided to approach her. They took the form of a young man, walking slowly up to the table. The woman looked up from her notebook, surprised to see someone standing there. But instead of looking wary or suspicious, she simply smiled, as though welcoming the stranger into her world. "Hi," the Fire said softly. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." The woman shook her head. "Not at all. I was just lost in my thoughts," she replied. gesturing to the empty chair across from her. "Please, sit." The filer sat down carefully, their curiosity growing. "What are you drawing?" they asked, leaning forward to see the woman's notebook. The woman smiled, her eyes lighting up with pride. "It's nothing special," she said, but her voice was warm. "Just a sketch of the people I've seen today. I like to capture little moments, moments that others might miss. I think there's beauty in those small things, you know. It's not about making a perfect picture. It's about capturing the essence of a moment." The filer looked at the drawing. It wasn't perfect. The lines were rough, and the proportions were off in some places. But there was something captivating about it. It felt real, raw, and imperfect, yet full of life. The people in the drawing weren't models. They were ordinary humans, captured in ordinary moments. But those moments were full of emotion, of joy, sadness, and everything in between. The filer realized that what made the drawing beautiful wasn't its perfection. It was the emotion behind it. The artist had captured the essence of humanity, not through flawless technique, but through a connection to the world around her. The filer were silent for a moment, thinking about what the woman had said. "I don't understand," one of them finally spoke. "Why do you focus on imperfections? Why not try to make things perfect?" The woman laughed softly, a sound that was genuine and warm. "Because perfection isn't real," she said simply. "It's an idea, a goal that we can never really reach. If you only focus on being perfect, you miss everything that's special about life. Imperfection is what makes us human. It's what makes us unique. It's what makes us interesting." The filer stared at her, absorbing her words. They had never heard anything like this before. In their own world, perfection was everything. It was the standard, the goal that all beings were expected to reach. But this human woman, with her simple sketch and her wise words, had made them question everything they had believed. Perhaps perfection wasn't the most important thing after all. Perhaps it was the imperfections that made life meaningful. "You see," the woman continued, "I used to try so hard to make everything perfect. I thought I had to get everything right, or else I wasn't good enough. But over time, I realized that the mistakes, the flaws, the messy moments, they are what make life beautiful. If everything were perfect, it would be boring. There would be no room for growth, for learning. Imperfection is what gives us the chance to learn, to change, and to connect with others." The filer were quiet. They had never thought of imperfection in this way. It was a revelation for them. They had been so focused on achieving perfection that they had missed out on the beauty of the process, the growth, the mistakes, and the learning that came with it. As the evening grew darker, the woman packed up her things, preparing to leave. Before she stood up, she turned to the filer with a smile. "I hope you understand now," she said softly. "Life is messy, and that's okay. It's the imperfections that make it worth living." The filer nodded, their minds spinning with the new knowledge they had gained. They had come to Earth to understand humans, to study their emotions, and to uncover the mysteries of their behavior. But what they had learned was something far deeper than they had ever expected. They had learned that imperfection was not something to be feared or avoided. It was something to be celebrated. It was what made life real. It was what connected humans to each other. And it was what made the journey worth taking. As they watched the woman disappear into the crowd, the filer felt a sense of gratitude. They had begun their journey on Earth, searching for perfection, but they had found something far more beautiful, the wonder of imperfection. It was a lesson they would carry with them, one that would change the way they viewed the universe and themselves. The filer stood there for a long time, reflecting on the evening, on the words of the woman, and on everything they had learned. The city around them buzzed with energy, with people continuing to live their imperfect, messy lives. But the filer now saw it all with new eyes. They saw the beauty in the flaws, the growth in the mistakes, and the humanity in the chaos. They had come to Earth searching for answers, but they had found something even more profound: the wonder of imperfection. The filer had been on Earth for many weeks now, observing, learning, and even interacting with humans in ways they never thought possible. The more they saw, the more they realized that humanity was driven by something far beyond just logic or the pursuit of knowledge. It was a search for meaning, an endless quest to understand their place in the world. The Phio had always been about finding certainty and clarity, but humans were different. They didn't always need clear answers. Instead, they sought meaning in the most unexpected places. One of the things that puzzled the Phio the most was how humans seemed to live with a constant sense of purpose, yet that purpose was often changing. Some humans seemed to dedicate their lives to helping others, while others chased dreams of adventure or sought knowledge in the stars. There were those who lived for family, while others lived for a cause or a belief. Yet, all of them, each and every one, seemed to be searching for something, even if they couldn't always define it clearly. To the Phio, this was both confusing and fascinating. How could so many different people, with so many different goals, all be searching for the same thing? Something that was so elusive and so difficult to grasp. The Phio decided to explore this search for meaning more deeply. They began to seek out conversations with humans who appeared to be on a journey, those who had questions they were trying to answer or goals they were striving toward. Perhaps, the Phio thought, if they understood what humans were searching for, they would understand the deeper essence of human life. One day, while walking through the streets of a small town, the Phio encountered a young man sitting alone on a park bench, his eyes focused on a book in his lap. The Phio, taking on the form of a young woman to blend in, approached him cautiously. There was something about him that intrigued them. He looked as though he was deep in thought, perhaps lost in some kind of inner struggle. His posture was relaxed, but there was an intensity in his eyes, a kind of quiet longing that drew the Phio toward him. "Excuse me," the Phio said softly, sitting on the bench next to him. "You look like you're deep in thought. Is everything okay?" The young man looked up, startled at first, but then smiled warmly. "Oh, hi," he said. "I didn't realize I was staring so hard at my book. Yeah, I'm just thinking about life. You ever wonder what it's all about? I mean, what's the point of everything?" The Phio was struck by his words. The search for meaning. They had found it again, right here in this young man's question. Without fully understanding why, they felt compelled to ask, "What do you think the point of life is?" The young man chuckled lightly, shaking his head. "If I had that answer, I think I'd be a much different person. I've been asking myself that question for a while now. You know, when you're younger, you have all these dreams. You think you're going to change the world or do something amazing. But then you get older and you realize how small you are in this big, crazy world. I guess I'm just trying to figure out what really matters." The Phio leaned forward, intrigued. "And have you figured it out?" The young man hesitated. "Not yet. I mean, I've learned a lot over the years, but I'm still not sure what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. I've tried different things, studied, traveled, worked, but I don't know. There's always this feeling that something's missing. Like I'm searching for something I can't quite define." The Phio nodded slowly, feeling a deep sense of empathy. This young man, like so many others, was on a quest for something that couldn't be easily put into words. It wasn't a destination he was after, but a sense of purpose, a feeling that he was meant to be part of something bigger, something that gave his life meaning. The Phio had never understood this feeling before. For them, life was about understanding, about gaining knowledge and certainty. But humans didn't just seek knowledge, they sought purpose. And it seemed that the search for purpose was as important as finding the answers themselves. "I think what's missing," the young man continued, "is the sense that what I'm doing matters, that I'm part of something larger. I see people around me, living their lives, chasing after things that seem to give them meaning. And I wonder, am I missing out on something? Is there a bigger picture I'm not seeing?" The Phio thought about this carefully. "Is it possible," they asked, "that the meaning you're searching for is already inside you? That perhaps you don't need to look outside for answers, but rather within?" The young man raised an eyebrow. considering the question. "That's an interesting thought," he said slowly. "I mean, I've always thought meaning had to come from something bigger than myself. But maybe it starts with how I see the world and the things I care about." The File smiled inwardly. They had stumbled upon something profound. The search for meaning wasn't just about finding the right answers or discovering some grand truth about the universe. It was about finding significance in the way humans lived their lives, in the choices they made, and in the things they valued. The File had been so focused on finding the answers, but perhaps the real meaning was in the journey itself, in the act of questioning, searching, and living. "So," the File asked gently, "how do you think you might begin to find that meaning?" The young man thought for a long moment. "I guess I have to keep exploring," he said. "Keep doing what I love, try to connect with people, and see where it leads. I know I won't find it right away, and maybe I never will. But I think it's the act of searching that matters, right?" The Filer nodded, feeling a sense of clarity they hadn't felt before. The search for meaning was not a quest for a fixed answer. It wasn't something that could be found once and for all. It was an ongoing process, a journey that could take a lifetime, shaped by experiences, relationships, and personal growth. Before they parted ways, the young man smiled at the Fire. "Thanks for the conversation. You've made me think. Maybe the meaning of life isn't something we have to figure out all at once. Maybe it's something we discover along the way." As the Fire watched him walk away, they felt a shift inside themselves. The young man had opened their eyes to something new, the idea that the search for meaning itself was what gave life purpose. It wasn't about finding a single answer. It was about the pursuit of understanding, about learning, growing, and connecting with others. And for the first time, the Fire began to see why humans could be so driven by this need to find meaning. It wasn't just about the destination. It was about the path they took, the experiences they had, and the connections they formed along the way. Over the next few days, the File spent more time reflecting on the conversations they had with humans. Everywhere they went, they saw people asking the same kinds of questions about life, love, work, and the universe. Some people were looking for meaning in their careers, others in their relationships, and still others in spirituality or philosophy. But each person, regardless of their background or beliefs, seemed to be searching for something beyond themselves. It was as if the search for meaning was hardwired into their very beings. The File began to realize that perhaps they had been wrong all along. They had come to Earth seeking answers, hoping to find a logical explanation for everything. But what they had discovered was something far more complex and beautiful. Humans weren't just looking for answers. They were searching for significance, for connection, and for purpose. And it was this search that made their lives meaningful. As the File continued their journey on Earth, they felt a deep sense of gratitude. They had learned that the search for meaning was not about finding one final answer, but about embracing the questions, the uncertainties, and the challenges that life presented. It was about the journey itself, and that, they realized, was the most profound lesson of all. The File had spent many months on Earth, learning from humans, observing their lives, and discovering the complexities that made them unique. They had seen humans laugh and cry, build and destroy, love and lose. Each experience, each interaction, had been a lesson in the beauty and unpredictability of humanity. The File had come to Earth searching for answers about life, emotions, and imperfection, but what they had found was something far more profound: humanity itself. Throughout their time on Earth, the File had come to realize that humans were not defined by their successes or failures. It wasn't about whether they were perfect or had all the answers. What made humanity truly remarkable, the File realized, was the capacity for growth, change, and connection. Humans had an incredible ability to adapt, to learn from their mistakes, and to rise again after they fell. They could find hope in the darkest of times, and they could offer kindness to others even when they themselves were struggling. The File had never seen anything like it. One of the most beautiful things about humans, the File thought, was their capacity for love. It was a feeling that transcended reason, logic, and even time. Love was not something that could be explained or measured, but it was a powerful force that seemed to drive everything they did. From the love between parents and children, to the love between friends, to the love between strangers who helped one another in times of need, love was the thread that wove humanity together. As the file reflected on this, they began to understand something fundamental. The gift of humanity was not about any one individual or accomplishment. It was about the collective journey, the shared experiences, and the bonds that connected people to each other. Humans didn't just live for themselves. They lived for others, and in doing so, they created a world full of meaning, beauty, and purpose. It was a gift that the file could never have fully understood without seeing it firsthand. One afternoon, as the file wandered through a small village, they encountered an elderly man sitting alone on a park bench. His face was weathered with age, his clothes simple, but there was a kindness in his eyes that immediately drew the file to him. There was something about him, something that seemed to radiate peace and wisdom. The filer approached him, curious to learn more about this man and the life he had lived. "Hello," the filer said gently, sitting down beside him. "How are you today?" The elderly man smiled warmly. "I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. It's a beautiful day, isn't it?" The filer nodded, taking in the peaceful surroundings. The village was quiet, with children playing in the distance and birds singing in the trees. It felt like the kind of place where time slowed down, where people could appreciate the simple joys of life. "I've been observing humans for some time now," the filer continued, "and I've noticed that there's something very special about your kind. You seem to find meaning in things that others might overlook. Why do you think that is?" The elderly man chuckled softly. "Ah, that's a big question, but I think I can answer it. You see, when you've lived a long life, you start to realize that it's the little things that matter most. The moments you share with others, the kindness you offer, the love you give. It's all these things that make life worth living. We spend so much time chasing after big goals, trying to achieve things that we think will make us happy. But in the end, it's the simple things, the quiet moments, the laughter of friends, the warmth of a hug, that give life its meaning." The filer listened intently, absorbing every word. The elderly man's perspective was something they hadn't considered before. The file had always been focused on grand ideas, on discovering the secrets of the universe and achieving perfection. But what they were hearing now was something different, something far simpler, yet far more powerful. It wasn't about the pursuit of knowledge or accomplishment. It was about the connections we make with others, the love we share, and the joy we find in the everyday moments of life. The elderly man continued, "I've seen many people come and go in my time. Some have sought fame, others have sought wealth, and still others have sought answers to life's big questions. But in the end, what remains is the love we give and the memories we leave behind. That's the gift of being human. We may not be perfect, but we have the ability to love, to care, and to make a difference in the lives of those around us. That's what truly matters." The filer was silent for a moment, reflecting on what the elderly man had said. It was true. Humans weren't perfect, but they had something far more powerful than perfection. They had the ability to change lives, to make an impact, no matter how small. They didn't need to be flawless to be meaningful. They could give love, compassion, and understanding to others, and in doing so, they created a world that was rich with purpose and connection. The file realized that this was the gift of humanity, the ability to create meaning, to connect with others, and to share love in all its forms. It wasn't about achieving greatness or being perfect. It was about embracing the imperfections and using them to build relationships, to make the world a better place, and to leave a legacy of love and kindness. The file had come to Earth to understand humans, and now, for the first time, they felt like they truly understood. As the sun began to set, the file sat with the elderly man in companionable silence, watching the world around them. It was a moment of peace, a moment that reminded the Fire of everything they had learned during their time on Earth. The journey had been long, but it had been worth it. They had learned that humanity was not defined by its flaws, but by its ability to grow, to love, and to make a difference in the lives of others. Before they parted ways, the Fire turned to the elderly man and said, "Thank you for sharing your wisdom with me. I've learned more today than I could have ever imagined." The elderly man smiled again, his eyes twinkling with warmth. "You're welcome. Remember, it's not the big things that matter the most. It's the little things. The way we treat each other, the love we share, the kindness we show. That's what makes life truly special." As the Fire walked away, they felt a deep sense of gratitude. They had come to Earth seeking knowledge and answers, but what they had found was something far more valuable: the gift of humanity itself. It wasn't about perfect answers or flawless beings. It was about the connections people made, the love they gave, and the lives they touched along the way. The Fire had come to understand that this was the true gift of being human, and for that, they would always be grateful.